Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Welcome to my first ever sketchbook practice video. And of course you can use whatever supplies you have on hand, but I'm just gonna go through what supplies I use in this video. Of course I have my sketchbook, and then I have an angular brush, a small scruffy brush, detail brush, fan brush, a small flat brush, a round brush, and then I also just have this tool for mixing the paints. For my paints, I have primary red, phthalo green, primary yellow, primary blue, and also titanium white and burnt umber, which I'll just refer to as brown in this video. You're also gonna want all your basics like a palette, a rag or paper towel, and a jar for water. Of course, all these supplies are listed in the description box below, and that is all you'll need. And so let's get painting. First, I take some brown and white and mix a very light brown. For this first tree, I'm going to use my angular brush and scruffy brush. I start to make a basic tree trunk with the angular brush using the light brown we made. After I make my basic tree trunk, I start to take some of the original brown and add some texture and shadows onto the trunk as well. And I add lots of branches. If you look at trees, you'll notice that they have tons and tons of branches. So that's why we will want to add a lot of branches to our trees. Alright, now this is the fun part. I use red for the leaves. To make the shadows, I mix some red with brown, making it the perfect dark red color for the shadow leaves. I decided to use a smaller scruffy brush because my tree is pretty small. I dip the bristles into the paint and kind of dab it out the excess onto the palette. Then I tap the brush on where I think the shadows of the tree are on my branches. Now let's mix a slightly lighter red shadow color. I do the same thing I did to mix the first color, but I use half as much brown so the red is much lighter. Now I dab this above the dark shadowed areas, filling in more of the tree. Next, I take the normal red right out of the tube and finish filling out the tree. Lastly, I mix a little white with my red to add some highlights. I dab some where I think the highlights are on top of the tree and a few in the center. Now I go back in and add some more shadows and details with the other colors. I quickly mix green with some yellow to add some cute grass under the tree. For the next tree, I got my detail brush and fan brush. I take some brown and mix it into some of the light brown we made earlier, just to make a slightly darker brown. Making a straight tree trunk, then thicken it slightly and add branches to each side. Now take your fan brush in the Phthalo Green. I only dabbed in the smallest edge of the fan brush and used it to dab paint down the tree. Now I take some of the yellow and mix in a tiny bit of green with it to add a highlight to the tree. Lastly, I just add a little grass on the bottom. I didn't love how this one turned out with the fan brush, so I decided to make another with just my detail brush. I do the same thing with the trunk. Then I go into the green and do small strokes starting from the outside and coming into the trunk. After I do all of those, I take a yellow-green mix and add some to the tree where the light hits it. Then I add some green, lightened with a lot of yellow in those brightest spots. Then I just add a little bit of grass. Now I make one more evergreen. This one is a little different. I made the trunk a little thicker and added big long branches to the top that only came out about halfway down the tree. Now I take the darkest green and do little dots for the leaves in clusters around the branches. Then I go in with the green-yellow mixture to add highlights. And lastly, do a very yellow-green for the last round of highlights. Then I add the grass. For my next tree, I use the flat brush for the entire tree. I made this tree similar to our first tree, but a bit taller and longer trunk. I used the same lightish brown and made the trunk. Then I did more details on the trunk, adding shadows and highlights. With a dark brown, I added lots of branches. I mixed all the colors of the leaves right now. First, I made an orange with a yellow and red. Then I added some brown to it. I took a little more of the orange and added some of the mix we just made to it to make it slightly darker. Then I did that again just to mainly tone down the brightness of the orange. Lastly, I took a bit of yellow and added the smallest bit of the main orange color to it. Now again, very similar to the first tree, I take my darkest color and dab in shadows all around the tree in clusters that I think would be the darkest. Going into the next color we made, I start to dab in right above those shadows. Now taking the bright orange and filling out most of the rest of the tree. Finally, taking the brightest color and adding that where I think the light shines on the tree the most. Then I just go in and add a little bit of grass. For my final tree, I use my round brush. I take a mixture of the lightest brown and the darker brown right next to it. Then I create a bent trunk for a palm tree. I mix some of the lighter and darker brown on the trunk and add some texture and shadows. Now unfortunately I took a break and my palette dried up, so I have to start over with the colors. For the coconuts, I just used the brown out of the tube and added 2 round coconuts, one peeking out from the back of the first. Then I mixed some green and white together. The green was much too blue for my liking, so I added some yellow till I got just the color I wanted for the palm leaves. For the leaves, I wet my brush because I wanted the paint to slide right off. And I started at the center, right above the coconuts, with the tip of my brush, then pressed down as I moved away and lifted the brush back up slowly towards the end of the leaf. I did this for each palm leaf. I've never painted a palm leaf before, so this is the first practice for me with these. Now I added shadow and light just like with the other trees, except with the palm trees, I did it on each individual leaf. I added the grass at the bottom, and that's it. Thanks for painting with me today. I hope you enjoyed practicing trees with me. See you next time.